This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV Prime. In association with Micromax. Nothing like anything.
Engineering and design capabilities being built into Tata Motors for future products. We meet with the head of the car business as well as the head of design. I'm at a place I've been wanting to come to ever since it first opened its doors. Somewhere I wanted to bring you as well. This is the Mahindra Reva facility just outside of Bangalore. I've heard so much about this plant, can't wait to show you everything that's in there. Welcome to a brand new episode. I'm Siddharth Vinayak Partnkar. As you've seen, there's plenty more we've packed into this episode. So let's start off before I go in with Tata Motors. What can we expect from this car maker? I had the chance to go across to its technical center in the UK to find out. Yes, there was buzz from Tata Motors at the 2014 Auto Expo when we saw this, the Bolt hatchback, the Zest subcompact sedan and the Nexon concept. Finally, the company seemed to excite us after years. So how has this change come about? The answer lies in Coventry in the UK, in the University of Warwick to be more specific, that houses Tata Motors' European Technical Centre or TMETC, where the company's many global employees have been hard at work to build a future for the Indian car, bus and truck maker.
Now the part a lot of people don't realize is that this center was actually set up way back in September 2005. That's way before the Jaguar Land Rover acquisitions.
That's right. The center was established to give the company a more direct sense of new global automotive technologies and how that knowledge can be utilized to create better products. The location was picked because Coventry is the epicenter of automotive engineering in the UK and Europe too in many ways. The center houses different departments where teams are focusing their energy on future technologies, be it in the realm of product engineering, including new engines, connectivity, materials, or design.
When you talk about new vehicle development these days, a lot of the engineering work, a lot of the proving doesn't happen in actual engineering bays anymore. It happens in places like this. Looks like a corporate office, but actually all of these computers, everybody is busy and hard at work. When it comes to things like body components, chassis stiffness and overall dynamics, a lot of that work now happens right here on the computer screen.
It is areas like handling, stiffness, chassis integrity and ride quality where Tata products have suffered in the past. And don't forget, development cycles in the industry, while much shorter than a few decades ago, can still run into 4 or 5 years, sometimes even more. So getting all of this to market can take some time. And in some cases, the work may be looking so far into the future that the market may not be ready for it, like the work Tata has been doing in researching electric vehicles.
So what started off with the Indica and the Vista, the full electric car program, has now moved to the REEV program, as they call it here, which is the range extended electric vehicle. Now what you're seeing here, of course, is a Manza. That part is incidental. The idea here is to focus on the kind of unit that's been installed here and the potential it has to go into not just this car, but other cars like it as well, and so become a little bit more mass in its application. All right, so range extender. Essentially what that means is, unlike a hybrid vehicle where you could go from electric power to the conventional engine when you're talking about the drive here, the engine unit inside is solely used to generate power to charge the battery, which means it doesn't have any mechanical linkage whatsoever. So you're never driving really on fuel. It's always on electric power, and it's a very neat little setup. I'll show you the batteries in just a second, but what you're seeing here is the power conversion unit, and below here is a very small 800cc unit, which is where the auxiliary power comes from, which charges that generator. Now, I said that the application could go into different kinds of cars. That's what Tata is trying to work on, because in a real world scenario, you'd want to have this sort of an option for not just one vehicle, but perhaps a fleet or portfolio of vehicles. That's the battery unit back there. The whole endeavor is to, of course, try and make charging easier, try and make running a whole lot easier as well, and safer too, and not really compromise too much on luggage space or on passenger space inside the car. So here you can see the passenger cabin is identical to the regular Manza. The luggage space, of course, needs a little bit of work still, and that's where some of this ongoing research is going to take Tata Motors.
The battery pack is the make or break in all electric car projects, and Tata is working to figure out ways to use slimmer yet longer running batteries that aren't too expensive.
Now, this Manza has done a few thousand miles, but they do have a Reeve unit that's been fixed onto a Vista that's also on the facility that's done 50,000 miles already, and we're talking miles, not kilometers, so it has proved itself in the real world. Now, these test cars use an engine that's been sourced from a supplier, but in the future, the whole idea of the testing that happens in the labs here is to try and incorporate the nano engine. It's the ideal sort of an engine, isn't it? When you look at a smaller engine that does the job when it comes to that generator unit that we talked about. So that's where the potential for keeping costs low when it comes to a Tata application starts to go up.
The Reeve is possibly aimed more at developed markets than India for now, and that ties into the company's ambitions to be truly global. And so, catching up to manufacturers that have had many more decades to mature is another challenge the Indian company has to face. Hence, we see the use of new technologies to help cut lead times, like with the lab car that I came across.
So I've just turned off the hazard lights on this car, and that's what this is. This is a car. It may not look like one, but well, the lab car as they call it. The idea here is to save time and costs when it comes to the development of all electrical components on a car. We're not just talking about individual components or the lights, we're also talking about the wiring harnesses, just to make it a little more optimal before you move to an actual prototype. So you don't have to build a whole lot of prototypes. You don't have to take too much time as well that's required to test those prototypes. All of that can happen here, and you can change the inputs as well. Like over here, I can change the speed that this car is driving at, and also turn up the engine revs. As you can see, there you go, it's about 2500 RPM almost, and you can just provide the input and then see how all of those components work given that kind of input to this vehicle.
Next, I headed across to the company's design facility, also in the UK.
I remember getting excited about it at the 2011 Geneva Motor Show when Tata first showed the Pixel concept. Now, of course, it kind of took off from the nano idea and then tried to say that, look, how can it be more relevant and a little bit more modern? Then you got the megapixel that also came in, and a new character, a new face, if you will, for future Tata vehicles is something that we saw with the megapixel. And then this year we got the Nexon, which was debuted at the Delhi Auto Expo and then also made its global debut again at Geneva. Now, the whole point here is that you're seeing a nice little growth when it comes to the future design. Now, a lot of you might argue and say that, hang on, none of the Tata vehicles in the market right now look anything like this. But you will start to see certain elements. Take a look at this front grille, for example. You will see hints of that in the Zest and the Bolt, which are, of course, arriving in just a few days' time into the market. A few other elements as well that you pick up on, but the encouraging part is that the company is thinking of future design, is thinking of getting a little more youthful, a little sexier, and you'll start to see that in those future products that now have the board's approval all the way through 2020.
So that's a little bit difficult to believe, and trust me, I felt the same way, especially since the Bolt in particular looks way too much like it's really just a facelifted Indica Vista.
Now, some of you have seen me saying this on Twitter, where I would switch the names on these two cars and call the hatch Zest and the sedan Bolt. But having said that, there's another question which has always sort of been bothering me right from the Auto Expo. Why go with a design that very distinctly tells you that this car is coming off of the Vista, and then this one, of course, the sedan version of it? The idea to actually relate back to those Tata family of vehicles so that people identify these cars as being from the Tata stable. I don't quite agree with that logic. But then we spent some time with the design team to get a sense of what they're trying to achieve, even trying our own hand at redesigning the Zest. Not too successfully, I might add. Tata does have design centers in Turin in Italy, here in the UK of course, and at its headquarters in Pune in India. The entire car design division is headed by Pratap Bose. Thank you, and thank you for letting us into your world today.
Most welcome.
I know that there's lots of people who have lots of questions for you, and of course we're going to get him to answer some of those for you directly as well. But first and foremost, let me get a sense from you on if there are some sort of key highlight words on the future of design at Tata Motors. What are those words?
It's going to be bold, it's going to be desirable, and it's definitely going to be memorable. And it'll help you sort of stand out from the crowd. So it's these 3 or 4 words that guide anything we do now.
Over the last few years, when it comes to Tata and design, very often there's a blurring of, for a consumer, let's say, there's a blurring between purely what is design and what is, quality or a perceived sense of finishing on a vehicle. Is there going to be a distinction firstly over there going forward? Do you think people will identify design more purely as a Tata design?
Yeah, I think, it works together, Siddharth. I mean, good design needs very good quality to actually express it. So, we are working very hard, for example, with our gaps, with our flushness, with how things come together. Because it's not enough to just have a pretty picture, the whole car has to come together in a certain quality way. And then you start appreciating the whole. So it will blur at that level, but we are working very hard currently to make good design and good quality sort of come together. To be very, very frank with you, we actually designed the Zest first. We designed the Zest first. We made sure we got the right proportion, the right silhouette, the right integration of the boot to the rest of the car. Yeah. Once that was done and we were happy with that, we derived the Bolt from it. Usually it's the other way around. And,
which is where the problems
Which is where the problems can be. It's very challenging to integrate a short boot into the rest of the car. But when you still look at both the cars, they're clearly for different segments of the market. They're for a different target customer.
So they have their own identity.
They have their own identity.
That's the second point. What's the one distinct characteristic when you look at just the face of this car that tells you that this is the Bolt?
See, what we've picked up, the humanity line, for example, which we speak about, we don't sort of highlight that on the Bolt because it's a sportier car, it's a smaller car. When you go on to the Zest, you'll see in a very subtle way, you'll see that in the grille, the humanity line is actually picked up.
Yeah, very prominently accentuated.
And we feel when that goes in chrome, for example, if we launch it in chrome, just that little subtle touch will enhance it or change the look. We've of course also got DRLs, LED DRLs in the Zest. That in the daytime running condition will give a completely different front visual look.
The shape, I mean, is that going to be like a distinct shape going forward?
Yeah. We have this hockey stick which sort of plants the car onto the road. It plants the car to the wheels. It's very important that everything in the bottom of the car actually points to the wheels and really holds down the car and gives it this planted look.
Now, the first thing that strikes you when you step inside this plant here at Mahindra Reva is how quiet it is. Most car plants are noisy affairs. There's no welding that happens in here. That's perhaps one of the noisiest components. What you're seeing here, in fact, is a way to reduce noise on the car itself. That's a testing bay that checks transmission to make sure that the car isn't too noisy when it's out on the road. And what you're seeing here is the basic chassis or the frame of one of the actual cars that's going to head out into the market. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this plant is that the plant itself has a platinum rating, which means that it's very energy efficient in terms of the way it's built, the kind of energy it uses, and also, in fact, the company has gone a step further and tried to make each of the processes that much more energy efficient. So even the material that's been used here
is a special composite that you can see lets the natural light in. So you need very little artificial lighting inside for the actual production process. And the little light that is used artificially is made up of LED panels, which means again consumption is a lot lower. And the good part is that 30% of all the energy needs come from solar paneling that's just outside. Makes it all pretty impressive. Now, I was talking about Tata Motors just before this. You had a chance to see what's happening there. Let's also get a little bit of an insight from the company's head of passenger car business, Ranjit Yadav.
So it's very straightforward. We are a volume player in India, so we have to be across the board. We are not going to be a niche player, so I have to, over a period of time, fill out every segment. There's clearly a strong play in small cars. We know that. That's the major market in India, and we will address that progressively as we go forward. In utility vehicles, we have an opportunity. We have a strong lineage with the Safari, with the Sumo, and we can strengthen ourselves there. We will start to do that as well. So every year, we will bring a couple of new vehicles to the marketplace.
What about the compact SUV? You've shown the concept at the Auto Expo, so people are going to ask you that question now. How soon would you like to see these vehicles come? I mean, I know from a marketing point of view, you'd like those cars in the showroom right now. How urgent is it, or how important is it to get them there quickly?
So, you know, we have a large portfolio. Basis that portfolio, we are making some choices in what we bring to the market first. We showed the Nexon. I think everybody loved it. And what I said is maybe we're a bit late to the party with that, but it's so compelling that it will win in the marketplace. When asked on time, I have said it would be 24 months. Yeah. So
from the time you first showed it?
That's right.
All right. And between the Nexon and the Zest and the Bolt, is there going to be a new product there as well, or will that be the next new product?
So completely new vehicles will be launched by us, and like I mentioned, a couple of them every year. We have a portfolio which needs renewal, and we're working on it.
All of the electronics that you see here on the E2O, very different to, of course, a conventional car. You don't have an ECU unit, but what you do instead have is this one little black box of sorts here that continues to monitor the car's drive dynamics and its overall performance, and sends in that information to the company, so that there is a team of people that continues to monitor your car, and if there is something that needs to be attended to, even if you don't see it, they do, and they come and make sure that they address it for you. Time for a short break here on CNB. We've got more from this Reva plant and lots more as well coming up. Welcome back to CNB. So you've had the chance to walk around with us and take a look at the Mahindra Reva facility, but there is primarily one man behind all of it, someone who you've seen on the show before, so doesn't need an introduction as such. Chetan Maini, good to see you.
Thanks, Dad.
And as I said to you when I first walked in and met you, good to see you here. You know, unlike at one of the global motor shows or at you know, the Auto Expo or any other event.
Yeah, it's glad to have you here.
Formula E, a nice little surprise. Nobody really saw that coming, again, from an Indian perspective. What does it do for you?
First, this whole impression that electric cars or golf carts need to go. I think the biggest thing the industry today needs is awareness. So I think that's a good part for us right
Great
through.
visibility, yeah.
The second, I think, is a brand part. You know, I think Mahindra is really looking at how we get our brand. And motorsports has always been a large portion of building people's brands. Works well with us because we're also entering the E2O into these markets. And so therefore people can relate that, hey, there's a Mahindra racing car, and tomorrow there are electric cars from there. There's a technology link. But internally for us, we think that racing pushes engineering to the limits. It pushes teamwork to the limit, you know. And we think that this is where Mahindra Reva would have a large role. And I see it a two-way strip. I think we're going to contribute a lot into this, and I think we're going to get a lot. And this is a little bit different from other motorsports because technology is quite apart. But in electric mobility, the battery systems we would use or we use in Formula E are probably 90% similar. The management systems and telematics are similar. Our simulation capability is similar. So we see a lot more road to race, and I think that means you don't, while you have a separate team, you also have your current team part of it. So I'm really hoping in the future, you know, we get the performance part here, and we probably push affordability into the other side and look at it, and the Constructors' Championship is an important aspect in this.
You had me smiling through that because I was going to ask you exactly that, you know, the whole race to road kind of thing. it's so different when you derive something as opposed to literally transporting it from one to the other. And I think you have a greater opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just a simple example, an engine in a regular car may go up to 9,000 RPM, but an F1 would be 17,000. Electric cars go 14,000 RPM, and maybe the race versions go 2,000 more. So the gap between race and street is very little. And so you don't need this whole new kind of development. You're just pushing the edge in each area. So that, I think, is where it's a big advantage in electric.
I like the yellow, I of course like the blue, and these colors, by the way, aren't painted on. That's one way that they've been able to cut costs, because you don't have a paint shop here. You have impregnable color that's been used into that panel. So if you dig into that panel, the whole panel is that color, which means you don't need to paint it on. Now what you're seeing here is the actual panels being stuck onto the chassis. And yes, I'm being serious when I say they are stuck, because this particular unit delivers an adhesive that's specially mixed. There's two different sources you can see. Specially mixed on the spot, goes on, and that's the only layer that comes between a panel and the chassis. This machine helps to compress it in so that it stays in place. And yes, you have to believe me when I tell you that it really does work. They don't fall off when you're driving. I'm always partial to blue. I have driven the red, that was the first car I drove, and I've also driven this green. So today I thought, now that I'm here at the plant, I should also get back into the E20 and check it out once more. And I picked the nice bright yellow. Yes, you got lots of colors, and you know I love them. Why not go with the yellow? That is a wrap here on the program. We've packed lots of it in as always. Please react to what you've seen today and tell us what you'd like to see on the program as well. Please wear your seatbelts, please wear your helmets. I will see you next week, and there's plenty coming up on Auto Prime right through this week, 8:30 p.m. every weeknight on NDTV Prime.